Hi, thanks for joining. Today I'm at the Nikkei Internment Memorial Centre in New Denver, British Columbia, and we're going to pay respects to the Japanese that were interned here during World War II.
The Nikkei Internment Centre is a site dedicated to telling the story of an infamous chapter of Canada's history. In 1942, during World War II, about 22,000 Japanese Canadian people were stripped of their civil rights and displaced from their homes. Despite the fact that 3/4 of them were Canadian citizens, the government labeled them as enemy aliens and relocated them away from the West Coast. About 12,000 of those displaced people were sent to internment camps established in remote regions of British Columbia. Located at the site of one of the former internment camps, the Nikkei Memorial Centre is dedicated to remembrance and acts as an important memorial to the Japanese Canadian community. Visitors to the centre can learn about the hardships endured by these Japanese Canadians and view traces of the past in the form of a community centre and 3 of the original cabins that were built to house internees.
This is one of the residences that was constructed in 1942. At one time there would have been 200 of these residences on site. And they have it set up so that the right side of the residence looks like it would have in 1943 after the residents had settled in, but the left side of the residence has been left to look like it would have in 1942 when the Japanese internees first arrived. And it looks pretty bare. These are some of the outhouses that were on site. There wasn't any sort of running water at the time, and one of these outhouses would have serviced probably 4 to 6 different families. In 1957, a lot of these residences were moved onto plots of land, and the deed for the land was given to the Japanese internees. And if you can believe it, this residence was still in use up to 1985. This peace arch was built around 1945 by internees, and it used to sit outside of the entrance of the tuberculosis sanatorium. This hall was built in 1943 by Nikkei carpenters, and it served as a place of meeting for social, political, and religious gatherings. These pictures show some of the property that was confiscated during the internment. This is a fleet of vessels that were impounded by the Royal Canadian Navy that once belonged to Japanese fishermen. An inventory of bicycles. And here are photos of vehicles that were impounded and stored at Hastings Park in Vancouver when the Japanese were first interned. And this section speaks about the initial internment at Hastings Park, where hundreds of Japanese were temporarily interned before moving on to internment camps like this one. This section shows memories of the New Denver Tuberculosis Sanatorium, which was constructed in 1942 by internees to help those who were sick with tuberculosis. And some of the artifacts from the sanatorium. And when the internees arrived, many of the residences had not yet been constructed, so many families spent the first year and the first winter living in a tent just like this one.
In 1988, the Prime Minister of Canada and the President of the National Association of Japanese Canadians signed a historic redress settlement, and the government issued an official apology with a token monetary compensation for the property losses suffered during the internment. The camp where the Memorial Centre sits is one of the few detention sites built for the internment that wasn't torn down after the war, and it's the only one where descendants of the displaced Japanese Canadians continued to live until present day. The Nikkei Internment Memorial Centre was created in 1992 to preserve the buildings associated with the internment. And as one of the few sites that still contains traces of this tragic event, the centre was designated a National Historic Site of Canada in 2010. Sitting out front of the community centre, the Kohan Reflection Gardens was created to honour the Japanese Canadians interned here during the Second World War. This serene garden gives visitors the chance to pause and reflect on the impact that the internment had on the Japanese Canadian community.
Until next time, remember to keep exploring.